So speaking of lack of inventory, the producers just set this up massively for us. So this article is from Inman. Homebodies are hampering the housing market potential by not selling. Homeowners with low mortgage rates and seniors choosing to age in place aren't eager to sell, according to a new analyst by First American Financial Corp. Homebodies. So these are homeowners that don't want to give up their rock bottom mortgage rates and seniors that choose to live in place. Dan, I know you probably looked into this, but according to the last numbers from the National Association of Realtors, existing homes, we already read that, 5.8 million.
Yep.
An annualized real of 6.34 million last month. So this quote is from First American chief economist Mark Fleming. He said, "You can't buy what's not for sale. And the homebodies don't seem ready to relieve the pressure, the supply pressure, keeping a lid on the market for potential growth." And there's a nice chart, producer Matt, if you want to show the chart. So Dan, what's going on here? Give me the Dan a phrase, if you will.
You want me to Danaphrase it?
Yeah, please.
So, well, that's, I mean, what we're talking about, because I keep talking about, I think in our last two prediction shows, at the end of the year, we do prediction shows.
We do.
We guess. We were wildly incorrect at the end of last year. Sorry, no, 2019 going into 2020, we were wildly incorrect. But Pete Thorpe had a very, very good prediction that was dead on. If you didn't watch that, go back and watch that show. But I've been talking about this silver wave. It's going to happen. Now, it's not it's not just going to happen all at once. I would hope that would happen, that the floodgates would burst and a bunch of boomers, a bunch of elderly people would sell their homes. But it was more kind of predicted to happen over the course of 10 years. But what's happening is they're choosing to age in place, meaning they're choosing to stay in the home, because what it seemed, and Ray's been in this business a lot longer than I have, but what it used to seem like is, kids get older, you're 55, 65 years old. Kids are now out of the house. You got all those stairs. You got that big house to clean. Now you're going to right size. Now you're going to change, exchange your bigger home for a smaller home. But Ray had an opposing story that he can get into in a second, but that's kind of what it was. And then they kind of take advantage of all that equity they built over the 30 years they were there. They built their family, and then they go buy a small condo somewhere, then they go travel. Or they, just that becomes whatever the equity that they cashed out on, that becomes their retirement. But that's not happening. They're staying in place. They're choosing to age in place. And now I don't know, maybe it's now because they don't want to go start over and start a new place. All the family's comfortable coming to that house. If the grandparents are here in California, they travel here a few times a year and hang out. And they have the big house, and they're fine with keeping that, but they're choosing to stay in place, except for your sellers that did the opposite, Ray. And I find it very interesting that it's with as high as much money as these sellers have made just in the last year alone, even more than that, the last 6 months alone, they're not choosing to cash out, and kind of, it's extremely interesting to me.
Yeah, and the chart that Matt was showing says the house buying power fueled market potential in May. So house buying power, it's basically showing two charts, or three charts really. The average 10-year length, how long people are staying in their home, potential home sales, and then the house buying power. The average 10-year length is it really up to 10.6 years?
I think that's years. Yeah.
That's long. So for context, when I was in real estate in 2006 and 2007, I was an assistant in 2006. I got licensed in 2007. People were moving on average every 2 to 3 years during that time period. So then what they're saying is a lot of people are choosing to age in place by staying there up to 10 years. And what's funny is we even had the discussion the other day that maybe we wouldn't sell our house for a long time, but instead would buy, a couple of vacation homes in places we like to go to, some on the beach, some in the mountains. And instead of worrying about a bigger house where we are now, buy houses that we want to go to and spend more time at around the country or around the world. And maybe a lot of people are doing that. But you mentioned a couple of anecdotal stories that I've had where people were buying a house the baby boomer generation, not aging in place. They were buying another house, selling where they were, and instead of getting like normally people used to downsize, when the last kid graduates college or high school, then mom and dad go get a smaller house.
They
It's
go
really
to the ranch style, all
right,
single story
right, right,
with
right.
maybe a little more land, but smaller house.
And they sell their 4 or 5 bedroom and give that up or their big 3 bedroom with a bonus and give that up to another family that's coming in there, right? Well, these people were buying a 4 or 5 bedroom home, and that was how they right sized instead of
They went
downsized.
bigger.
And
Yeah.
I asked them kind of what they were looking for in the buyer interview, and basically they wanted a place where they could basically live downstairs and would have a couple extra rooms, but then have whenever the family came over, when all their kids and grandkids, and they would all have rooms to stay in. And during the pre-show show yesterday, there was some discussion of, I wonder, I think maybe Matt or Kelly, I can't remember who it was saying maybe that is, oh, it was Andy Rose. Andy Rose has thorn. He was saying maybe that is because the pandy that happened, and when people couldn't go anywhere or couldn't leave anywhere, people are now wanting a house where everyone can come to them. So I think you have two situations. You may have people aging in place with those bigger homes because they know that when their family wants to come into town, they already have a place for them because their kids grew up there. So they have a room for every kid, and now that kid can just kind of return to their room. And we Patrick Ellis Home Inspection says, "How dare them wanting to stay in their current home?" I agree. Melissa Mara says, "I'm getting a story from a buyer right now about gangsters and Italian food in Philly. What is this day?" Yeah, I don't even know, but thanks for sharing. So yeah, I mean, I think maybe the reason why my people were moving and why a lot of people are aging in place are the same. They already have space for their family, and they want their family to be able to come and visit to them, kind of like what you were saying.
That's kind of, what I was saying is the families are used to traveling here or coming back from college or whatever it is, just to the home. And, I got to go back to it. It's just interesting that all of this equity they can build. I think I've mentioned it, my dad, Norm, we all know Norm. He's on here lurking. He's the only lurker that's allowed. But, in the last, 45, 46 years, he's built some pretty good equity. Now I agree with what Norm's doing. He's in an amazing place. Never leave that spot. It's too good to be true almost. But, I do find it's interesting, especially, getting that average staying in their homes, getting over 10 years now. And there is one more stat. Now it's kind of an older stat, but there's this is, let's see, I don't know who said this. It references Fleming, but I don't know who Fleming is.
Mark Fleming.
Mark Fleming. He's the chief economist. So he described a 2019 study from Freddie Mac that shows if seniors and adults born between 1931 and 1959, that's when I was born, behaved like earlier generations, they would have released nearly 1.6 million additional housing units to the market by 2018. So obviously a little older of a study, but they're continuing to age in place. So imagine if that were just to start loosening it up. I mean, 1.8 million, imagine what that would do. Not only would they still take advantage of a very, and I read another article, it says, extremely hot market is now a hot market. So it is trending towards, cooling off a little bit, but imagine if they all took advantage of that and helped all these buyers that are taking advantage of all these buyer programs. I mean,
well, they would only help the buyers if they're in the bottom 1/3 of the market. Otherwise, they're going to be buying another property in the bottom 1/3 of the market because they're quote unquote right sizing, generally going smaller, right? And so if they do move from their big house, it does give some relief to the middle market, but that bottom 1/3 now has even more competition, and that's where everyone's failing because builders aren't building in that. They're not building in that price range.
Yeah, and there you go.
That's kind of a point. Cordell said, but those older folks can't afford nursing homes for the cost of new homes on fixed income.
Right.
Yeah, and the only way to relieve the housing inventory is if they left their house and went to an assisted living or some kind of
project. Didn't try to buy another one. Right.
Yeah. Melissa Mars said, my mom would love to downsize, but She doesn't want to bring my brother with her. Yeah, maybe that's kind of why they're aging in place, because they still have those millennials at home. So if they are deciding to age in place, a big popular thing that they probably did last year and maybe are doing this year is refinancing. So the rates did drop temporarily to the lowest level in a month. And when they did, refis again shot through the roof. So the total application volume rose 4.2% last week from the previous week. This article is from CNBC. They said after 3 straight weeks of declines, mortgage demand came crawling back thanks to a drop in interest rates. Refinances led the gains, rising 6% for the week. They're still 22% lower for the same week a year ago. The refinances share mortgage activity increase. Let me not gloss over that number. They were 22% lower than the same week 1 year ago. So if you recall, whenever the pandy happened and rates tanked and everyone was refinancing, it got so bad that there were some banks increasing their interest rates on new purchase applications so
and
that they could
tightening
manage
their
and
guidelines.
tighten the lending constraints so that they can manage the number of clients they were servicing for refi. So it is 22% lower than the same week a year ago, but I don't, that may be like kind of just a normal level. Refinance share on mortgage activity increased 61% of total applications. Let's talk about applications to purchase. They increased 2% for the week, but they were still 17% lower than a year ago.
That's a big one to me. So while we were figuring out what this market is, it's still lower. Remember, applications to purchase, not closes, not new contracts. Applications to purchase lower than a year ago when we didn't know what the market was. Is that good or bad? Or is it just nothing?
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a neutral position, I guess.
I mean, it's good that there's less buyers because there's not enough inventory.
Yeah, it depends on what side of the coin you're on.
But does this all lead to the unhealthy housing market? Because are we hurtling towards an unhealthy housing market?